All right. So here is a list of all those topics which you should really be good at in order to solve any questions of class 11th and class 12th. So in almost every single chapter, there are certain concepts which are quite common and we use them regularly. So this is a list of those topics. So one by one, let us go through all these topics. But please note, these are not the core concepts. If you are strong in these concepts, then solving questions becomes a lot easier throughout class 11th and class 12th. So here we go, starting with proportionality. So let me directly start with a question where we can apply this effect, proportionality. Let's see. Let's read this question. A firework rocket launched vertically explodes into two pieces, X and Y. When it reaches the maximum height, the mass of X is greater than that of Y. Which statement is correct after the explosion? And the statement is kinetic energy of X is less than that of Y. The question is this statement correct? So all we need to do is, since we need kinetic energy and we know the formula for kinetic energy, half mv square. Now a lot of students approach this question by just directly reading this. The mass of X is greater than that of Y. So from this formula, kinetic energy is half mv square. It appears as if kinetic energy and mass are directly proportional. And since in the question it is mentioned that mass of X is greater than mass of Y, and since kinetic energy is proportional, so we can say that kinetic energy of X is greater than kinetic energy of Y, which would mean this particular statement is actually false. Kinetic energy of X is not less than that of Y. But all of this approach is actually wrong. This is incorrect. And that is where the rule of proportionality comes into the picture. So, from this formula, we cannot say kinetic energy is directly proportional to m. Let me explain that concept in a little more detail, starting with proportionality. So, for example, let's start with the same formula kinetic energy is half mv square. So, the concept is proportionality works only when all the other parameters in the formula are constant. So, in this case, there are three parameters. First of all, you can see kinetic energy is the first parameter, m is the second, v is the third parameter. So, we can say kinetic energy and mass are directly proportional if the other parameter in the expression, which is v, that needs to be a constant. So kinetic energy and mass are directly proportional only if v is constant. Similarly, kinetic energy is directly proportional to v squared. So look at this expression. Kinetic energy and v square will be directly proportional if the other parameter involved, m, is a constant. So this is true only if m is constant. And now consider a situation where the question gives you that kinetic energy is a constant. Then m and v square will be proportional. But what we can do is we can take this v square on the left hand side of the equal sign. So basically cross multiplication. And then we can say that mass of the object will be inversely proportional to v square. But this will only be true if the third parameter involved is a constant. In this case, kinetic energy. So this is true only if kinetic energy is constant. And let me take one more example. One other formula, potential energy, we know is mgh, where m is the mass, g is the acceleration due to gravity, and h is the height. So let's apply the same logic here. We have four parameters here, Pe, m, g, and h. So we can say potential energy and mass, they are directly proportional, but all the other parameters need to be constant. So here, g and h are the other parameters. So only if g and h are constant, then only we can use this proportionality. Next off, if I try to connect the mass and the height, is there a proportional relation between m and h? There will be if all the other parameters like p, e, and g needs to be constant. So mass and h will be inversely proportional if p, e, and g are constant. And why are we doing inverse proportionality? Because if you look at this expression, if we take h on the left hand side of the equation, the h will come in the denominator by cross multiplication. That is why we have inverse proportionality. Using the same logic, if we try to connect G and H with a proportionality, same trick, H will be inversely proportional to G. But again, this will be true if all the other parameters in the formula are constant, which means PE and M. Only if PE and M are constant, then only we can use this proportionality. And this concept we are going to use in almost every chapter. To sum up, the logic is proportionality will work only if all the other parameters are constant. Now, coming back to the question, we were supposed to check is the kinetic energy of x less than that of y. So earlier, we directly said since kinetic energy is half mv square, kinetic energy is directly proportional to m. Now, in the exam situations, a lot of students do this. But the correct approach is kinetic energy and mass will be directly proportional if the other parameter in the expression, the speed, only if speed is constant, only then we can do this. But in the question, they have not given any information on the speed. That is why we cannot use this proportionality. So, what is the answer? The question was, is this statement correct? The correct answer is this. Please read out. We actually cannot say anything as no information on speed is given. Since that information is lacking, we cannot use this proportionality. So, kinetic energy is not directly proportional to m in this case.